Yo, what is up guys, it's NLG here, and today I am bringing you a tiny little update from our channel, but mainly every single announced feature for TEW 2020, which should be dropping in the spring, and it's late February at the moment, so we are getting close. It's mental to think that it is 4 years since the last iteration of the franchise TEW series dropped. That's a long time. Now, I'm sure we're all hyped. There's been some big announcements for it, but I found myself a couple of months ago thinking, I can't remember what any of these are. So today we're going to go through all of them. I've got them written down in a big spreadsheet here, as you can see, because I'm using my own personal mod for TW. So I wanted to have these all written down so that when the game comes out, I know exactly what I need to change when I convert the mod from 2060 to 2020. So today there are a lot of features, as we can see, and we'll be going through them all. So strap yourself in, get yourself a little bar of chocolate, or if you're allergic to chocolate, then don't have chocolate, have something else. Have a big fuck off bowl of cereal. Get yourself a nice drink, and let's go through the features. Now, the very first one is that you can now play as the owner or head bookers of child companies such as NXT, or if you're a masochist, you can play as NXT UK. I don't know why you'd want to, but the option's there. So that's big, because people have been wanting this for quite some time, and rightly so. And it means that if anyone wants to do an NXT series, I know there have been those on YouTube before, it's now easier to do it, and also you'll be told who's getting called up, who they want to push, so that's quite cool. And I think it'll be that little bit different, and it means that if you want to run an NXT, you have to play around the real life issues that NXT would face. So if someone wanted to call up a worker from developmental into the main roster, of course it doesn't have to be NXT. There's companies like OVW, Deep South, FCW in the past as well. But the second edition, is a quality of life change. So there's a lot of them, but the main one is the TEW2020 is now 1366 by 768. So that's a lot bigger, which is a similar interface to WMMA5. I've got a couple of videos on that on my channel. It's a very fun game, but I'm going to turn that down a little bit. But I think that's really good. I'm really happy about that. The way the game's going to be designed is different, and there's a lot less clicking now, which is really good, because one thing I've noticed is that when you start a new company and you're signing everyone, it feels like you're clicking forever. It feels like all you're doing is click, 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 click. There'll be less of that. As someone who plays WMMA5 quite often, it's a lot easier to run WMMA5 because you're just clicking a lot less, and I'm quite happy about that. I like that the game's now bigger, like pixelation wise. I can't remember what the word is. I've absolutely lost the word, but basically it's larger, you know. It'd be like going from, if we do that, it's like going from that to full screen kind of. But which is something that I didn't even think of as an addition, but it's something I'm really happy about. So during an event, you can drop out of the event and alter segments that are yet to occur. So say in the opening match, you're booking Monday Night Raw, and it's Seth Rollins versus AJ Styles versus bloody No Way Jose, and the winner of that match goes on to fight the winner of Roman Reigns versus Samoa Joe in the main event for a title shot. But Seth Rollins is going to win the opening match, but oh no, he gets injured. He tore his ACL again. Now you can drop out of the show and alter segments that are yet to occur to make sure he doesn't have to wrestle another match like that. And also means, say if you're booking a King of the Ring tournament and you want to have William Regal win, but in the first round he gets injured and has to lose because of it, and the game books on the fly, you can now alter your remaining segments so that it doesn't mean that the rest of the show no longer makes sense. Another good thing about this is that if you want to book someone who has two different characters within the company, you can do that. So if you're booking like 08 TNA, and you want to book Christopher Daniels, and then later on you want him to be Suicide or the Curry Man, you can do that. Obviously, Christopher Daniels isn't the Curry Man. We don't know the identity of the Curry Man, but that's just a suggestion. The switch player button has also been added for all of 2-player saves, so it means that if you do a 2-player save, I don't know anyone that does, but a lot of people probably do. So it just means that you can go from one player to the next without having to advance further in game time. Also, one that I quite like is event order. If multiple events occur on the same night, they occur in order of company size. So first largest, then second largest. So for example, say David Starr, if he worked for WWE but still worked on the independents. If he had 5 events in the same night, it would be WWE, then say, I don't know, Ring of Honor, and then AAW, and then fucking IWA Mid-South if he worked for those promotions. But he doesn't work for most of those promotions. There's also event intent, which that rhymes. I quite like this as a mod maker, because events now have an intent of how it will be promoted to the fans. These are normal, lesser, tour, and throwaway. Now, normal is the default. So that's, say, like, Extreme Rules. Now, a lesser event would just be, like, a random, like, shitty show. One way I could describe it better is, say, a company such as Revolution Pro Wrestling in the UK. Rev Pro are having their York Hall event. Sometimes they have a lesser event when they just travel to a random town and draw a lesser crowd because the stars such as Will Ospreay, David Starr, Pac, Zack Sabre Jr. often aren't on those shows. So those shows mean a little bit less, kind of like a house show. The tours, we all know touring shows, and a throwaway is just a show that doesn't matter. However, the intent of the event can impact the attendance and popularity effects of it. So it's going to be harder to gain popularity from a throwaway show than it is from a normal show, and the attendance will be lower, but of course the fans' expectations of the event will also be lower. Additionally, something I think is pretty cool, again, another one that I didn't think of, at any point in a save file, you can convert the file into a normal database. So if you're booking WWE in 2030 and you're like, wow, this is really fun, I wonder what would it be like to also book TNA? Well, you can convert it into a normal database, and then you can book any company from that time period without it messing up your save. And I see a lot on the Fantasy Bookers subreddit that people are doing like these saves where they get starting like 1987 and they end up in 2010. Imagine how many different database saves you could do on that database as you convert it. There are also 2 categories for venues and locations now. So venues are buildings such as Madison Square Garden. Locations are places such as New York City. Locations have capacities. I'd imagine the venues do too. It hasn't really changed much, but it's a feature, so I added it. And now areas and regions. So we've got some more geographical stuff here. TEW2020 has had new regions and areas both added and removed. United States of America and Canada, their regions are unchanged. The Game World screen, where it shows all of the locations, is now a single screen. I'm not gonna lie, it's not a screen I ever use, but each area and region now has a biography and stats such as spillover, which I think is quite cool. So I'm guessing they've moved the spillover stuff from the size bit over to there, which is quite good because it means a bit less clicking. Because if you want to find out your popularity, your importance, your influence, and your spillover from the size screen, that's a lot of clicking. So again, they've really honed in on making it just more user-friendly. Now, for the biography and stats, they do have a little biography for each area or region in WMMA 5, and I think it's quite cool that that's something that's followed on here. But whilst America and Canada are unchanged, that doesn't mean that all the other regions aren't. Mexico's regions were West Central, Northern, and something else. I think it might be in Southern or something. They are now... I failed GCSE Spanish, so don't expect me to sound like Enrique Iglesias here. My Spanish is shit. But Mexico's regions are now Occidente, Centro, which is central, Sur, which I believe is south, because I think Sureste is southeast, Noroccidente, which I think might be north, and then there's Noreste, which is probably north actually, but who knows? Who knows? Britain changed. It says now Wales, Ireland, South, Scotland, North and Midlands. So Central England was one big region and it contained a lot of Wales and the Midlands. They now have separate regions. So the only thing that really affects in a save is if you use a mod that has, say, WrestleGate Pro, Fight Club Pro, and Attack Pro in it. Attack Pro will now be based in Wales, but Midlands will keep Fight Club Pro and it will keep WrestleGate Pro, which means that there's a little bit less competition there, and also means the locations are a bit more specific to those regions. So one little change for mod makers will be with these events, they're going to have to set certain companies to be based in certain things. Events like, if a company has touring events, you're going to have to set them to be specific locations. But also, you've got the fact of these locations are going to have to change, because you can't have a venue that was in central Britain but in Wales. You can't have that be in central anymore. You're going to have to set to be Wales or Midlands and make sure that the Welsh ones are in Wales and that the Midlands ones are in the Midlands. Japan's regions are Hokkaido, Kyushu, Shikoku, Chugoku, Kansai, Chubu, Kanto, and Tohoku. If I butchered any of these, I do apologise. Europe's regions are Eastern Europe, Scandinavia, Central Europe, Southern Mediterranean, Iberia, Northern Europe, and Russia. And then the Oceania ones, so Oceania has changed. There's New South Wales, Queensland, South Australia, Victoria, Western Australia, Tasmania, and New Zealand. And don't worry, Tasmania is a region. It's not just a created tag team from Taz and Hulk Hogan. It's an actual area, apparently. But yeah, so that, I like this. I think that these are cool little things that have been done, because it just adds that bit more to the game. It fleshes out a bit more and adds a bit more options. So if you if you live in Australia, you want to book an Australian company, you can now book in those certain regions, and it's a bit more tailored towards you. Mod makers such as myself, we might now want to have a look at wrestling promotions that operate in those areas, to look at the venues that they use and then add those venues into the mod, just to flesh it out a bit, because I don't think anyone really wants their mod to have no venues or locations in a lot of these areas. And even if you can't be bothered to do that, because it might be work, you can always just set the locations as places. So say for New South Wales, you could have, I don't know what's in New South Wales, but if there's a place called New York there, you could set New York as a location, and then it means you're just fleshing out a little bit. And there is a new region, or game area, sorry, and that is India. The regions are North India, Central India, and South India. Viva la ring kicking! We can finally do that ring kicking save. You listening right now, I know you've been clamouring for this save. We all have, and you know someone's going to get their 2012 mod out, and they're going to convert it over, and they're going to book ring kicking. I know one of the two saves I'll do at the start of TEW2020. I've already announced the local global. The other one is genuinely a professional wrestling company in India. The Grey Collie is going to run wild. I cannot wait. If you cannot wait, comment "I cannot wait" on somebody else's video just to confuse them. Now, attributes. These are tags that can be assigned to workers, such as personality changers, such as Troublemaker, Great Ollie Murs song that is, lifestyle effects such as Straight Edge, and traits such as Daredevil. So yeah, it's just little things to differentiate different wrestlers. It adds a bit more spice to it, and I'd imagine it'll generate more game stories as well. And it might even make Daredevils more susceptible to injuries. Who knows? But yeah, so I think that's quite interesting. I'm imagining that I've said so yeah, quite a lot in this video. So if I have, I do apologise. We now have more awards as well. So Indie Wrestler of the Year is now for workers in companies below medium size, which is good because the only people who were eligible for that in TEW 2016 were people who were unemployed. So for me, it was pretty much being won by people like Jack Swagger and James Storm before Storm went NWA. And it was the same people. It wasn't fair. So now indie wrestlers, people that work in places like AEW or PWG, they can now win that award, which is quite cool. Injuries now state the effect that they'll have on a worker's performance if they work through the injury, which is quite good. And narratives can now occur on the day that the game begins, although that has a very, very minor impact on the game. Companies also now have strategies: monthly, almost weekly, constant, fixed, tours, and seasons. I'm really happy about fixed, because that means that the AI will stick rigidly to what has been added to the database. So the events that have been added to it, that is the schedule that the AI will run. So if you're a British wrestling fan and you're thinking Schadenfreude and Friends is pretty cool, you can now add Schadenfreude and Friends to the database, and rather than unrealistically book 12 shows because it's got to have a show every month, it will just book the events that you have stated in the database. And a lot of independent promotions in wrestling, they only run 8 or 9, sometimes 6 events a year. So now it means it'll be a bit easier for companies to keep themselves afloat financially, because they'll not be forced themselves to make or to run more shows than they can afford. Also, I'd imagine with seasons, I'm pretty sure that means that you can just set companies to really just not do anything in certain months. Just like maybe Lucha Underground, I guess. You've got monthly as well, which is most companies, and then you've got almost weekly, so I'd imagine that's fortnightly or 3 shows a month as well. Event instructions have been added, so you can set defend all titles such as Night of Champions. There's all 1 versus 1 if you want to do maybe a King of the Ring tournament, and you can set main event is 1 versus 1, 2v2, etc. So you can have the main event be set to be a 6-way ladder match, which means Money in the Bank, rather than it be a tournament across the card, the main event will be a 6-way ladder match, which means that it's more realistic. Obviously, event instructions should probably need to be added to certain events, such as MLW's War Chamber, WWE's Survivor Series, NXT's TakeOver War Games, things like that. We have dojos and stuff like that up next. There are 3 categories of dojos. There are wrestling schools, which are privately owned by a worker. So, say Kurt Hawkins owns one, his would be a wrestling school. Dojos are owned by companies, graduates are loyal to the promotion, so think New Japan, think All Japan, think Noah, for example. And there are performance centers, so they have a higher chance of generating former stars from sports, and they also produce non-wrestlers and can send workers down to train, so they are more beneficial to have. Again, mod makers will want to be looking at that and going, I need to make sure that the New Japan dojo is a dojo. I need to make sure that, say, Revolution Pro Wrestling's school is a dojo. I need to make sure that NXT's Performance Center is a performance center. Now, area and regional battles have been revamped a bit. They are now based upon show quality and star power. The area battles require a company to be size of big or larger, because the sizes have all changed, and we will get to that at some point. It will be written down in here somewhere. Oh, I absolutely skipped that. Trust me to skip one and it'd be the only one that relates to something else. So if we have a look here, I do apologise. The size categories for promotions are now insignificant, tiny, small, medium, big, large, and Titanic. I kind of like that. That's cool. It's different. It makes things feel a little bit different to how it has in the past. The only thing I don't like about it is insignificant to Titanic challenge doesn't roll off of the tongue very well. Local to global rolled off the tongue. And also, if the goal of this series is to go from local to global, that sounds cool. Who doesn't want to have a global business? Would you really want a Titanic company, given how the story of the Titanic ended? But company importance has been removed, so I'd imagine that had an impact on the area and regional battles, but since they've been revamped, there was no need for it now. And size criteria now relates to your home base and differs per region. So I know that if you are booking a promotion in Puerto Rico, it's going to be easier to build up to Titanic, given the sense of it will be less important to break out throughout the country. However, if you're booking in New York, to reach say medium or big, you're going to need more popularity in neighboring regions than you would if you are based in Puerto Rico. But if you're based in Puerto Rico, you will need to gain more popularity in your home region than you would if you were based in New York in order to advance to a larger size. If that doesn't make sense, do comment down below and I'll try and explain it a little bit better. But yeah, I think that's pretty damn cool. I'm quite happy about that, and again, it just changes everything and it makes it feel like it's less rigid and it's less formulaic and that it's more natural. Now, where were we before? We were down here. There are new company relationships. Relationships are 2 sections, opinions and status. So companies can have opinions of other companies. So I'd imagine if you're WWE and you're signing all of Ring of Honor and MLW's talent, Ring of Honor and MLW are going to be thinking, you're a dickhead, stop doing that. and the status will be the status of the relationship, such as at war or working agreement. Companies can now accept excursions as part of relationships, which is quite good. Something that maybe should have been in earlier on, but it's great that we're getting that now, because a lot of times, if New Japan sends someone on an excursion, they'll probably just sit around and do nothing. That's not all that realistic. Sister companies are now added, and relationships can have knock-on effects. So if you're an alliance, say the New Japan, CMLL, and Ring of Honor one, if you're New Japan, you end that relationship with Ring of Honor, CMLL can then go, "Oh, you dickhead," and then they both could end up declaring war on you. So you've got to be careful, because actions have more consequences. AI championship reigns have been made more realistic, which I think is another good addition, because if you look on the game, it feels like a lot of the reigns are the same, especially in WWE, but obviously that'll be dependent to the mod you use because of the settings that each championship will have, as of how often it's defended, how often the promotion runs shows, and the prestige of the championship. Championships can now be set as achievements, which is brilliant. So Money in the Bank no longer has to be set to be a tournament, as we said before. It will no longer say has won the Royal Rumble Championship. It will say has won the Royal Rumble. So all achievements can be set as all tournaments. Can be set as achievements. So if you win Best of Super Juniors, King of the Ring, Money in the Bank, G1 Climax, Royal Rumble, Super Strong Style, Battle of Los Angeles, all the tournaments can be set as achievements. And that's the same as things like WWE's Battle Royals at WrestleMania. And these achievements can be set as occurring at certain events and in certain matches, as I mentioned before with Money in the Bank and the Royal Rumble. And they can be set to remain with the winner, such as Money in the Bank. So if someone wins the Money in the Bank briefcase, that championship or achievement, will remain with the worker rather than vanishing. Also, if you've got a mod, probably have that Noah and DDT are sisters. It might be worthwhile setting that RevPro and CMLL will accept excursions from New Japan in their company relationship. Talk to workers is a feature that's been implemented from WMMA 5, which I think can be a little bit broken at times, but you can now talk to anybody in the game world. I think it's a bit realistic when there's some random Brazilian fighter and you're going, "Oi mate, why don't you move to Britain and work for my shitty little dodgy promotion over here?" And they go, "Yeah, I'd love to move all the way across the world and fight for your shitty promotion." I think that's a little bit dodgy. Hopefully it'll be less easy to exploit on that game. It's something that I shy away from using on WMMA 5 unless I'm a really big company. You can talk to anybody in the game world though, and the replies depend on your influence within the world. So yeah, that's great. As I said before, you kind of forget some of the features. However, because of this, that means if you are WWE and you are booking as someone very influential, say Triple H or Paul Heyman or Vince McMahon, you're going to get better responses than you would if you were just me booking a insignificant sized promotion. You can ask questions from 4 categories. These categories regard the person's career, their in-ring career, physical, and lifestyle. So you can ask people, for example, to move base. You can ask them to retire, to become available in a new area, and change their style or mass. So you could ask someone to bulk up and be like, "If you bulk up, I'd like to bring you in. If you drop a size or 2, I'd like to bring you in." So maybe if you're New Japan Pro Wrestling and you want to bring in, I don't know, you want to bring in Tetsuya Endo, but he's rose up to middleweight, and you only want to book him as a junior heavyweight, you could ask him to change his mass. Or it's the same with WWE, getting people like Cedric Alexander to drop about 20-30 pounds in order to partake in the Cruiserweight Classic back in 2016. And you can get people to change the style. So you could have a great wrestler like Marty Scurll, who's a very entertainer style at the moment. You could get him to change his style to maybe more of a technical wrestler, or just a regular wrestler. If an entertainer, for example, wouldn't really fit your company's product that much. House shows can now have loops and set days, which is good, and the finances of them have been redone. They have a bigger impact on fatigue and injuries, and AI uses smart booking to remove fatigued workers. That is brilliant, because if you book in Japan, you might notice that if you're a large company such as New Japan, some of your wrestlers, their physical will go from green everywhere in their body, green head, arms, torso and legs, and go from that to orange quite quickly, and you're thinking, well, I've only booked you 6 times. The product, if it has high physicality and danger, maybe get rid of house shows, maybe set it in people's contracts so that they don't have to work house shows, because if you're booking a Japanese company with house shows, people are going to get very fatigued, but there's a big chance of injuries, and you don't want all your people getting injured. Merchandise now is a level between 1 and 10. It feels like something's been very non-existent in recent games where you've not had to do much regarding it. Live event and mail order are the 2 revenue streams. Of course, mail order would be like www.shop.com. Live event would be purchased at the event. And the success of mail order is based on the popularity in each region. So if you have 0 popularity in Queensland and Oceania, then you're not going to get any merch sales there. But if you have Titanic level of popularity in South India, then you're going to make a lot of money from South India. But I'd imagine, again, just like it has in previous years, the economy of the area will have an impact on that. AI, again, we uses smart booking to remove fatigue workers. That's a house show, so I've just read the wrong one. It's hard to read sometimes. Ticket pricing. So ticket prices now match reality and have 5 categories. Premium, which costs significantly more. So say WWE, especially an event like Royal Rumble and WrestleMania in real life, they can cost big money. Normal, cheap, which costs a little less. Very cheap, which is slashed prices. So obviously in Mexico, companies like AAA and CMLL, they do have cheaper tickets than a company like WWE. And I'd imagine I would set WWE as premium for ticket prices. And there is free, such as Ring of Honor's free enterprise show recently, which had a solid match between Alex Shelley and Mark Haskins on, but I didn't really watch the rest of the show, so I kind of forgot about it. The ticket price impacts 3 things regarding the event. It impacts the fans' expectations. So if your event costs significantly more than other companies or normal events, if you're selling them for premium prices, they're going to expect a premium event. The attendance, if it's premium, you might draw a bit of a smaller crowd. If it's free, you could draw a massive crowd. But if you're selling those tickets for no money, fans are going to turn up in droves. There's going to be loads of them. You're going to make no money through the gate, but the fans' expectations will be low, and it'll be very easy to obtain more popularity from that. The types of contracts are now written and handshake. So written contracts can't demand pay rises, which is probably very exploitative. So if you sign, I don't know, who's a good indie worker at the moment? Andrew Everett. If you sign him on a 10-year contract for WWE, he can't demand a pay rise for 10 years. You can make him a main eventer on $1,700 a month. That could be a little problematic, but a handshake deal can have a set length of maybe 3 years, or just be ongoing show after show after show. If you have a worker such as David Starr on a handshake deal and he signs to New Japan on an exclusive pay-per appearance, then that handshake deal ends immediately. The payment for these is monthly or pay-per appearance, and you can now have written pay-per appearances. So if you're booking WWE, but you want The Rock, you want to be able to use him on Raw, but you don't want to pay $52,000 a month for him, you can now give him a written pay-per appearance. So that is quite helpful. And downsides are only required when a company is size big or above. It used to be regional, now it's big. So that's quite good. I'm very glad about that. And of course, you can't sign written deals for an insignificant or a tiny promotion, for example, because that just wouldn't replicate real life. We've got to set exclusive deals for Ring of Honor potentially. It might be worth having a look at that. And people like Jerry Lawler and Booker T, they're not getting the same type of contract as Seth Rollins, but a written paper appearance where someone like Booker T only shows up, I think, for the pre-show panels on pay-per-views, it might be worth changing him to a written paper appearance than a written deal, although that is a very minor detail. Something I really like is spiritual homes. Home arenas are now a thing, and when suitable, a company will try and use their home arena. That's really cool. So ICW in Scotland, theirs would be the Garage. Progress's would be the Electric Ballroom in London, for example. And a lot of indie promotions have spiritual homes, so it'd be really good to add those in, just so that companies, if there are 5 locations, or venues, if there are 5 venues in one region, say Northern Britain, with about 100 capacity difference of one another. It could be the O2 Academy in Newcastle, the one venue in Liverpool that's got 50 capacity more, one in Sheffield with 20 less than that, for example. If you set the company's home base to be the one in Sheffield, rather than run the show in the same region, but 150 miles away, they'll book it at the home base. So it's just a little bit more lifestyle or realistic than it is in real life. I don't know why I said lifestyle. Talking really is difficult. Angles now have 3 screens. Selection, which is where you select the angle. Booking, which is where you book it. And freestyle booking, which is what I always use, to be honest. I like just the freedom that it gives. Angles now have road agent notes, so that's quite interesting. That's a big change, and that could really impact how angles go. You can get cameo appearances from workers, such as, I don't know, maybe Ron Simmons going "Damn" on No Way Jose, just dancing through the background. And you can set crazy and stunt bumps on angles, which I think would have been a great addition for 2016. This is something good because you could have, say, from real life events, Bubba Ray Dudley powerbombing old women through tables off of the stage. You can now add things like that in angles, and you can set a storyline to force and advance in the angle, which is quite good. And angles can now be rated on fighting, which I'm really glad about, because before it was just overness, really, that you could use for it, or menace. But you can have 2 people fight, such as Seth Rollins and Cedric Alexander, and you could book it to be a really cool brawl where someone does a Toby over the top rope onto loads of security guards, but it wouldn't go well because their menace is low, so you'd have to book them on overness. So since it's now rated on fighting, that's really good. Again, something that should have been in last time, but we're getting it now, and that's what matters. And the way calculations occur for angles, the way they are calculated for that final rating, has also been revamped. Pushes have been changed completely. They have been replaced with perception, which ranges from the very bottom being unknown to major star, and that is how fans view them. I quite like that because if you're doing, you call up, I don't know, Shane Strickland or Zaya Swerve Scott, as he's now known there, if you call him up, he'll probably be default as an enhancement talent. But you don't want to book him as an enhancement talent, you're booking him as an unknown person to the rest of the roster, so that is quite good. Based on the workers' popularity and momentum in comparison to the company's popularity. So that is how the fans view them, that is how their perception is calculated. Fans cannot take to a worker you're pushing. So if you want to push Roman Reigns and it's 2015, the fans can go, I want to see Roman Reigns, and that'll hinder the matches, which I think is quite good. It's an interesting twist, and it is very realistic, it's quite lifelike. And that's quite good because in the past, if you wanted to take shitty wrestlers, who's a shit wrestler? Who was really shit? If you want to take, I feel bad for saying it, but Mason Ryan, he wasn't great. If you could just have him beat everyone, and the fans aren't going to complain. Now, if they're like, he's a bit shit, why is he beating Daniel Bryan? They'll go, I don't like that. And they'll not take to it. And there are also a range of perceptions within a women's division, which is great. So now, Becky Lynch and Sarah Logan aren't going to have the same perception. So that's really cool. It will be interesting to see if when you're booking a show, if you have a women's division, if the major stars of that division, such as Becky Lynch and Charlotte, will have their own major star bit, or if they'll just be lumped in the major stars with all of the men, because that could make booking a 6-way match or trying to work out who you want to have in a contendership match be very difficult if you're trying to do that for a male title and you've got Becky Lynch and Charlotte there, for example. Especially if you do have like 5 female major stars. The website is now known as the main screen, and it has multiple default skins for different areas, so that's quite cool. So there's the 80s, the early 90s, the later 90s, and standard. News stories are now appropriate to the era, so you won't get any social media stories in 1985. A little cosmetic change, I do really like it. Again, something that probably could have been implemented last time, but we're getting it now, and that's really good. Is there anything I've missed here? No, not on the side. So, broadcasters. There are 4 types of broadcasters. Pay-per-view providers, commercials such as USA Network and Spike TV, free-to-air channels, and subscription services. Each has 3 versions: terrestrial, which is harder to negotiate, most demanding and best revenue; cable; and internet. So that provides the least revenue, but of course YouTube isn't going to be very demanding, is it? It's not going to go, your show only got 47 views. If you don't get more views, we're going to kick you off of YouTube, because that's not how YouTube works. Terrestrial will be placed like BBC One, the default channels that you get on your TV, and cable, again, would be a company or broadcaster, such as Sky Sports. I would say American ones, but I don't know any American ones because I live in England. Must Cover Home has been reworked, so that's quite good for when negotiating deal with broadcaster. And the rating centre has been added, so you can see how different companies' shows are doing and how your show has been doing in recent times, especially in comparison to other shows, I do believe. And there's some notes to set for different broadcasters. We were told in the Developers Journal that all broadcasters will have to have their coverage levels checked because broadcasters have been reworked. So that's the main thing that we have to change when converting a mod from 2016 all the way over to 2020. Change number 35 is broadcasting deals. Company pays, broadcaster pays, revenue split. They are all now features and explain how or if the company is paid for their slot. So company pays. That is your company or a company paying for their slot on the network, such as how MLW do with beIN Sport. The broadcaster pays, that's most, such as Fox paying WWE a fuckload of money, and revenue split is the revenue is split between the company and the broadcaster, and I'd imagine that's pretty much what the company makes through advertising and stuff on the show. That's what would be being split. Broadcasters can want exclusive rights in an area, so Fox TV can go, your show, you can only broadcast that in America on our channel. Exceptions can be negotiated for WWE Network if your company owns its own network, which is quite good, and I'm glad that's added, because if it wasn't, it wouldn't have been too lifelike. Subscription broadcasting costs much less. So if you remember, trying to build a subscription broadcaster would cost like $20 million. That now costs much less to model real life, which is good. However, I am worried, because it can be quite exploitative to build popularity for your workers in loads of different regions, and you can end up with random indie wrestlers having 50 popularity in Britain despite having never worked in Britain. So I'm worried about that. Companies can now hold block tapings up to 4 shows at once, which is great. I really want that for 2016. I was a bit disappointed that it wasn't in for 2016. It's something that's been in real life for a long time. I think that should have been in then. But I'm just glad we're getting it now. Another change that'll help make the game feel a bit better. And this saves money, however impacts the ratings, because of course it does. People are going to get spoilers and stuff. Independent wrestling. So the generic indie events that occur, there are 3 levels of these, just like in WMA 5. Small level, which is little shows, only unemployed workers with low popularity that are nearby. Mid-level events, which features unexclusive workers and more matches. So that's people who aren't on exclusive paper appearance deals or written deals. And big time ones, which have more matches again. These are workers from anywhere within the area. So a small event based in Northern England would only use people from Northern England. A big time one would use people, if it's still based in Northern England, it'll use people from Wales and Southern England as well. And these events, the spawn of them, 25% of them are small sized, 25% are mid-level, 50% of them are big, and the frequency of them is linked to the agent pool or the free agent pool. So if there's no free agents, you're not going to be getting any of the small ones because there's no one for them to use. Now, stables have been reworked. There are different types of them, 5 different types: factions, brotherhoods, cults, gangs, and alliances. They can have a must involved, so that a stable will only be present, say, if it was Suzuki Gun, that can only be present if Minoru Suzuki's in there. Obviously, you could change that and have him hand it down to someone else, for example. You can have a variety of roles, so there is the leader, the deputy, the heir, so the guy will be groomed to be the future leader, just member, and then you've got muscle, lackey, fodder, and support. The AI can now change or change the members of stables, create stables, and finally incorporate into its booking. So if you're ever going, I wonder what New Japan's doing on this save, do you want to know what they won't be doing? Having Evil, fucking Minoru Suzuki, and Matt Jackson be the 6-man tag team champions. Finally, that's going to be a bit more realistic, and I can't wait for that. Another little change that just makes it that bit better. Loans now used to work as pay per appearance fee, and the limit of the amount of loans you can make has been removed. So if you want to book Ring of Honor, you can now book, just bring in like 15 guys and do a proper Supercard of Honor show. Rather than cost the written fee, it'll cost the pay per appearance fee, so it's more feasible financially. And also, it means that if you want to do a big invasion angle or a big war, or if you want to do a big company like battle War of the World's Companies event, then you can do it. So if you're New Japan, it would make doing Honor Rising and Fantastica Mania so much more easy. Now, there's another change for attendance. It's that the attendance is directly impacted by the star names on the show. So if you do a Monday Night Raw and there's no stars in it, your attendance will drop. Regional stars, as a result, are now much more valuable to independent promotions, as are loans and trades, because it'll help bring in the attendance, or bring the attendance up and bring in more revenue. Tag teams can now be made permanent, which is quite good, as the tag booking has finally been improved. Can I get a hallelujah? We can now see tag teams be booked properly, which is brilliant. TV shows can now be numbered, and up to 10-man single bouts have been added. So if you want to have Money in the Bank be a 10-man ladder match, you can have that! Brilliant. It means that you're not, if you're booking like 2005 WWE, you want to book the first Money in the Bank ladder match, you want 8 people in it, you can have 8 people in it. You can add 2 more, you can have 10. Wow, look at you. And it also means one thing I'll be doing is gauntlet matches. I love booking a good gauntlet. You can book up to a 10-man gauntlet match. Wowee, isn't that fun? Can't believe I've just said wowee, I'm 21. Worker styles have been changed. There are 16 styles now. Regular, entertainer, comedy, powerhouse, impactful, which is mixing strike, suplexes and submissions, striker, brawler, hardcore, psychopath, luchador, high flyer, technician, technician flyer, technician striker, daredevil and MMA crossover. If you're thinking, what's the difference between some of these? Well, don't you worry, because if you stick around to the end, we'll cover that in a little bit more detail with some suggestions of who falls into which bracket, just so that we all have a better idea and don't forget about it, especially if you're a mod maker, because a lot of them are gone. If you've noticed, Japanese Junior and Puroresu are gone. So there's a lot of workers that you're going to have to figure out, well, is he impactful or is he a striker? Is he hardcore or is he psychopath? Is he a technician or a technician flyer or a technician striker? Now, new notes. So when you're booking a match, you can have a double pinfall, you can have a dusty finish, partner miscommunication, which I really like, and at ringside, which is just someone at ringside, really. Products are overhauled. Now, there's good feedback from this on the developer's journal, so I'm glad, because I was worried about this. Now, if you're a mod maker, don't you dare fear, clap your hands for the world famous tag team champs and feel the power. It is don't you dare fear, isn't it? Oh, it's don't you dare be sour. I fucked it. But anyways, each company has a current product and a core product. Now, every company, as you convert the mod, TEW2020 will go, right, these products don't work with our products. But we're not just going to delete every company's product. We are going to give them the most suitable product we have out of the pre-written products. I cannot remember how many products there are, but there are a lot of pre-written products. They've been tested a lot, and there's more and more being added. And I'm sure when the game gets finished and it gets released and we all buy it and play it like mad, there will be more suggested and more added in future updates or patches. So each company has a core product and a current product. So the current product is how it is the minute. The core product is what it is at its core, to make sure that ECW, for example, wouldn't stray away from what made it so special. Women's wrestling, rather than have small division entirely or none, you can have, or just, it was division entirely, and, it was division integrated entirely and not. There we go. So it's now, you can have a small division, or a medium division, or a large division, or no division, or all women's wrestling. So I think that's quite good. Obviously, if you have none and you still book women as active wrestlers, I'd imagine it'll just put them in the roster as normal. I'm sure you can still integrate them. I'd imagine they haven't took that out because that wouldn't make very much sense, especially with how popular intergender wrestling could be. Again, that's something that we'll have to look at for certain companies. Now, match times for user book bouts are now stored invisible. I really like this. So if you book a match between Shingo Takagi and Will Ospreay, and you go, wow, that got a good rating, I want to do that match again, you can see how long it was. That's brilliant. Because now you can make sure that when you rebook that match, you give it a similar time to maximize the chance of re-getting a similar rating to that. Events can be fixed to a specific venue. So you can have it so that if you only want fucking Wrestle Kingdom to be booked in the Tokyo Dome, it can only be held in the Tokyo Dome as long as you set that. So that's another small change for us mod makers that just makes the game feel a little bit more realistic. Stables now have logos, so I'm making up my own little folder, a little picture pack for stable logos for things like Suzuki Gun, just so that it adds that little bit more to it. It's a bit more of a cosmetic touch. Now, there are AI booking styles. There's a lot of them, and we're going to get into them. There is old school, modern, and evolving Western. There is old school, modern, and evolving Puro. Old school, modern, and evolving Lucha. Basic singles, basic tag, and basic trios. Multi-man singles, multi-man overall, variety. So that would be, so the last one would be like a variety of just triple threats, 4 ways, 5 ways, 6-man tags, 2v2s and stuff like that. That's something that we probably won't have to look into too much, but that'll be something the mod makers will do, and once it's done, it's done. Momentum changes. It no longer goes from negative or major negative to major positive. It goes from ice cold to, ow, white hot. Just burnt myself there because it's so hot. Momentum now covers kayfabe and general performance, which I really like, and scandals can destroy momentum. So if you're building up your top challenger, Cesaro, and he goes and starts shagging prostitutes, or he says a racist thing on the Twitter, then his momentum's gonna go and plummet. Companies can also now relocate themselves if they want to, and or their child company, up to once every, not 1, not 2, but 5 years. So again, another little change, they'll just shake up these games a little bit. The editor changes, so the main editor has been revamped, which is good. Again, there's a lot less clicking, as was said, so if you're a mod maker, that's good news. The major screen is now all one screen. Mass editing has been heavily upgraded to cover all data, which is brilliant. It just makes everyone's lives that little bit easier, and I'm loving it. These little changes, they're kind of my favourite changes. I can't wait to do the Indian company, don't get me wrong, but as someone who has a mod, it's just so good to get these little changes that make our lives a little better. The AI can now book gimmick matches, which is great. So if it wasn't, the only time it would was if it was forced to. Now the AI can go, you know what? I fancy a steel cage match on SmackDown. Let's have a steel cage match on SmackDown. Aging and de-aging editor facilities are now there to edit skill levels realistically. So what that means is that if you are booking a 2012 mod, or you're booking a 2012 company, and it doesn't have Jonathan Gresham, and you want Jonathan Gresham, so you import from a 2020 mod, great, you've now got Jonathan Gresham, but his stats aren't appropriate, they aren't realistic or suitable to 2012. You can now use the de-aging editor facilities, which will edit his skill levels from where they are in 2020 to where they would realistically be in 2012, which is brilliant. And that would be based on the difference or the gap of time between 2012 and 2020, of course, and also how good and how experienced they are. Contracts now has its own category, which is really good. So that's in the editor as well. So again, just if you're adding a couple people to a company or you're removing a couple people, it just makes everything that little bit easier. And it means if you want to see if you're updating your mod and Seth Rollins, he's just turned heel on Raw, rather than have to click on workers and then go down to Tyler Black or Seth Rollins and then go on contract and then on WWE, or click on companies and then scroll down to WWE and click on roster and scroll down to Seth Rollins and then double tap him. You can literally just click contract, type Seth, and up will come Seth Rollins. It's so much more simple, and these are the things that I am loving the most, because my life will be made easier, and it'll make updating mods and doing big hauling on it or overhauling on it a bit less tedious, because it can be a bit tedious at times. Pre-booking can be set to mandatory and mandatory with bonus. What does that mean, I hear you ask? Well, mandatory means that there needs to be some things pre-booked. So if there's nothing pre-booked that looks good to the fans, the attendance and the fan expectation will be removed a little bit, or decrease a bit. Now, you can't just book, if you're WWE, you can't book AJ Styles versus Seth Rollins on a pre-book and then not actually deliver it, because the fans will be annoyed. Mandatory with bonus means that it enables you, if we just scroll a little bit down, enables you to achieve an attendance boost from booking a very attractive match. So if you pre-book in advance, say, again, Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa in the fans of NXT Cup, I quite want to see Johnny Gargano versus Tommaso Ciampa. That's a great match. That's a big match. More people are going to attend your event. So little things like that, a bit more realistic. Very good. Finances have been overhauled. Pay scales go as low as $10, which of course is more realistic. We've all heard the stereotypes of whenever someone does like a mad thing on indie wrestling, it goes on Twitter and everyone goes, "Oh, well, I bet he got paid $5 and a hot dog for that. I hope he's happy now." So yeah, that's been implemented basically, the sense of the payment, hopefully not people just being dicks. But that's more realistic, and it makes it more financially easy to run smaller promotions. As a result, attendances have been rehauled, especially regarding TV shows. But I'm glad the finance has been overhauled, and I'd imagine that that's going to make it a lot easier, because the sponsorships will have been overhauled as well with this. Now, if they changed the sponsorships and made that realistic so that local companies aren't getting thousands of dollars a month, but didn't change the pay scales, it would be impossible to go from a tiny company or an insignificant promotion up to Titanic, unless you just edited yourself like $10 billion. Now, brands have several categories: major, showcase, niche, minor, reserve, and throwaway. So major would be Raw and SmackDown. 205 Live would be maybe showcase. And then if you wanted to have certain people wrestle on main event, you can make a main event brand and just have it be throwaway. Brands can now have specific product and match focuses. Again, that would be great for 205 Live. AI brands use a near annual shake-up, which is great. And brands can be biased towards certain weight wrestlers. Now, a lot of people, such as Fleisch, haven't really put 205 Live in the game. They're always set as dormant, because TEW will just send loads of random people there, like the Big Show. So now that means that 205 Live will be booked properly, using appropriate wrestlers by the AI, and with a specific product, it means that those matches will get boosts, because they're not aimed at the fans in the same way that Monday Night Raw is. And they're not even aimed at the same fans. 205 Live has a different main audience to Monday Night Raw. So workers also now have individual merchandise sales figures, so you can see who's pulling in the big money for you. Contracts now include cut of merch sales, which makes sense, and usage of stables can be set via products. In New Japan, big usage of stables. WWE, not so much. TNA, never, apart from really aces and eights in the main event Mafia, as far as I can remember. I suppose there was the Beatdown Clan, but that didn't last that long. When workers gain skill points, they now increase slowly over time, which is good. It shows more realistic growth rather than just big jumps on a game. That's good. It makes it seem more lifelike rather than just digits on a screen. And yeah, it makes sense. I do quite like that. Users can now create elimination tournaments and round robin tournaments, which is really good. So it makes it easier. As you can see here, I've got a little bookmark called Cups. That's how I book all of my cups. If you want to book a tournament, challenge.com, that's CHALLONGE.com. That's what I use to track what's happening in the tournament. It shows all the fixtures, how many points everyone has, how many wins they have. It shows all the results. It shows the groups. You can put anyone you want in each block. It goes very in depth. It's quality. But TW automatically tracking and managing what takes place, it makes it that bit easier. And now when I would do it, I would have the document or the challenge.net be a small little bit like this on the left side of the screen. I'd have TW taking up the rest of the screen. Because TW, again, as we've mentioned, the dimensions of it is a lot larger than it is on 2016. It will be very difficult to have that happening, like your tournament tracker, on the same screen as TEW2020. Quite honestly, it wouldn't be possible. So the fact that that's being brought in is excellent. Call-ups and titles. So you can now book developmental companies, as we said. Well, we need warnings when they want to call up talents. So that's what happens. When you want to call up a talent and when the parent company says, "Oi, you, we're taking your person," they give you a 1 month warning, which means that you can now take the championship off of them if they're the champion, or if they're on a big unbeaten streak and you want them to lose before they go onto the main roster, you can do that and help get someone else over. So if you have, say, Johnny Gargano and he's now getting called up in a month, you could have him wrestle against a couple of worse people on his way out, just so that they get a bit of skill improvements from fighting one of your best players or people. Companies can now move titles between themselves and child companies, which is what WWE have done in the past with the WWE UK Championship, and especially the NXT Cruiserweight. Of course, when Pete Dunne appeared on Raw, he had the UK belt, as did Volta, and then NXT Cruiserweight goes back and forth between 205 Live and NXT. So, 3 skills: mat wrestling, chain wrestling, and submissions have all become one technical wrestling attribute. Skill comparison, floating ideas. So you can now conduct a side-by-side skill and popularity comparison between 2 workers. Excellent. Consequently, Fog of War has been removed and replaced with scouting. I personally don't use Fog of War, but that's because it's my database. Like, I make the database, so why would I use Fog of War? I know how good everyone is. I made the database. And Fog of War has been replaced with scouting, which I feel like makes more sense. So if you want to scout a worker, you can do that and get a better understanding of their stats, which is good, because if you're looking at hiring different people from the indies and everyone just says, like, in ring average, entertainment average, you know, it makes it that bit easier. You can also float ideas to wrestlers, such as them being unmasked, them taking a crazy bump, and then putting specific people over. That's been added. Workers, if they accept it, it will only last for a certain amount of time. I think it's like a couple months until it will no longer be applicable and you'd have to try and negotiate again. Workers can also come up to you and be like, "Hey, Mr. Booker of this promotion, I'm happy to work a program with Matt Riddle and put Matt Riddle over." And you'd go, "Okay, great." And then for about 3 months, they won't complain if you put Matt Riddle over them. Whereas if you try to do it normally, they might complain about, because there's a big popularity difference between the 2 workers. Workers and tag teams can offer to put specific people over, as I've just stated. In-ring performances are now stored, which is great. So you can see how someone's grown across the year performance-wise, and you can see who your most consistent workers are. So if you're thinking, I need to book a championship match, I've got my champion, I don't know who I should have challenge. Well, you can look at who deserves it, who's going to get a good main event against the championship or the champion, and you can also look at who you could groom for the champion. If you've got a mid-card or an upper mid-card who's performing exceptionally well, they've got a fair bit less popularity than your major stars, then you can look at that and go, right, I'm going to groom you to be a top star because you perform exceptionally well. Child companies aren't limited in growth, so they can become massive. The Game World screen has been overhauled. The Young Lion system is now company-specific rather than region-specific, which is really good. And skins can be changed within a game, so less clicking. You don't have to save and then back out the main menu of TW. Then click on the skin button, then select the skin, and then press select, and then press close, and then press the load button and load up your save. You can do it within about 2, maybe 3 clicks. Again, another small cosmetic life or quality of life change. Popularity caps have been overhauled, which is good. Crowds can become burned out if you book too much, which means that the calm the crowd road agent note will never have been more important than it is now, and edit chemistry has been added. So if you get 3 years into a save, if you start booking in 05, it's now 08, you want to use the Motor City Machine Guns or the Young Bucks together, and they have negative chemistry, and you don't want to book the Young Bucks as singles acts, you can edit that so it's more lifelike, which is great. The AI has become much more aggressive with hiring, which is good. I imagine it won't change too much for WWE because they never seem to hire because of how bloated their roster is. The only person they ever seem to hire is like John Moxley after about a year. Contract expiry dates are now visible, and complete all signings has now been on the decision screen. Again, another quality of life change, which I love, because if you've just started a company and you hire 40 people, you no longer have to individually complete it. You can just do it all in one go with the click of a button. Database makers can now set areas to be active or inactive by default, rather than have to select the option at the start of every save. Workers being overused also reduces their momentum, which is the Baron Corbin effect when you think about it. Everyone got sick of him because he was all over the show. Same with Shane McMahon. So again, if you keep overusing your people, the fans, it could harm how they take to them. They could go, please stop doing this. Painkiller use now has the advantage of masking health. So rather than have a major negative impact on a worker's performance, it might give them a better performance rating, such as Kurt Angle in TNA when he was fucking mental. The AI can now assign hidden pushes, such as strong opening to a new hiring, push to the moon, and phase out. Over 50 new nationalities have been added, and companies can be set an exact amount of money by the mod maker, which is really good. And again, it just changes things a little bit more and makes everything feel more natural and less formulaic. Hardcore and deathmatch match aims have been added, which is great. Hindi has been added as a new language, so you might want to have a look at making the Great Khali, Ranjan Singh, Mahabali Shera be able to speak Hindi, for example. And the editor now enables copy and tag teams, which I'm really happy about, because if you import 2 people from a mod and they're a tag team in 5 companies, you can now copy it rather than do it manually. And if, say, the besties in the world, they have recently moved to Evolve, you can just copy that and then change the company from Evolve, or to Evolve from, say, AAW. In company history, you can now view by event type, rating, date, and attendance. And in company info, you can now edit the company's name and logo, which makes it less clicking. Workers can now choose to go on hiatus. Overworking road agents and referees now harms performance. And Silver Tongue has been added as a user talent, which again is just from WMMA5. But yeah, if you're a small company, you might want to put a bit of investment into hiring more referees and road agents. This has went from copyright-free music to non-copyright-free music, so we're going to go right back to the start, which means that I've been recording for about an hour now, which is a long time. Road agents now give input as to stamina and psychology issues. Companies can now offer other companies a cash boost if you want to avoid having every company dying, for example. There are 3 types of trades. Talent trades, which is exactly the same as 2016. Talent offer, which is offering people for a loan period, asking for nothing in return. And talent swap, permanently swapping workers with another company like it happened back in the territories. Offer could be really good for getting people over in a different area, such as New Japan trying to get Carl Fredericks, for example, more over in Ring of Honor if they want to do that. Gimmicks are overhauled and replaced with a build-a-gimmick sale feature, which gives you more creativity and freedom, but it is affected by the user creativity talent. However, some products, obviously, this won't really matter. Alumni no longer shows people who are on loan or trades, and it has filters. The AI now sends workers to have surgery. The championship reign length is now shown in days rather than week 2 February to week 4 June, which again makes it feel more lifelike. Workers can now find themselves in social media storms by making poor comments, criticising people, or liking controversial posts. The availability calendar has been revamped. The list of dates and unavailable workers is now shown instead, saving time and clicking. The calendar has been added, showing every event in the next 3 months, which makes pre-booking much easier. So it means that since it shows unavailable workers, that's brilliant, because it means you know who's going to be at your next shows, and you can book around that if someone's not going to be at the show in 2 months' time. The Seaverse has been confirmed to begin in 2020, which means there'll be significant change because that's 4 years of industry change. And we have personality attributes, performance attributes, and miscellaneous attributes. What are these attributes? Find out in part 2, because I've just realised before that this is over an hour long. I don't want this to be too long, so very shortly there will be a part 2 where we go through all the attributes and the worker styles very shortly. So be sure to subscribe if you want to check that out, and if you don't want to check that out, that's perfectly fine. I hope you all have a lovely day, and I'll see you all later.